Attention! This video is in English. If you want to watch the Romanian version, you can find it on my channel or click on the link in the description below. Atenție! Acest videoclip este în engleză. Dacă vrei să vizionezi varianta în română, o poți găsi pe canalul meu sau accesând linkul din descriere. Recoil, the game I will be speaking about in this review, is one that has not been very popular, managing to remain off the radar for most players. Find out more details about why this has happened and interesting information regarding this game in the next minutes. And if you enjoy this type of content, subscribe, like this video, share it and turn on the notification bell. This is Dave from Golden Age Gaming Productions and you're watching the Golden Age Gaming review of Recoil. Enjoy! As I was saying previously, Recoil is a game that has managed to be known by very few people, mostly because it was released during a time where other big games were also coming out. At the same time, Recoil did not receive a worthy advertisement campaign, and thus its publicity, or rather its lack of, also contributed at the fact that this game remained somewhat unknown. However, the few ones that have played it have realized that this game was special in some regards and still remains special even today through some ideas that I will detail immediately. But let's start from the beginning. Recoil was released in the spring of the year 1999 on Windows PCs and to this day remaining the only platform you can play it on. And by the way, it took me a while to make this game work on Windows 10, but after a few hours I have managed to make it work, I could say, flawlessly, except for some weird things happening during the last mission in the game, and also apart from the soundtrack, which did not work. However, this could have possibly had something with the version of the game I have installed. Coming back to Recoil, this game was developed by a company named Zipper Interactive, which was founded in 1995. They have released a few games during the company's existence, mentioning Death Drome, Crimson Skies, or games from the SOCOM series. Later on, the company was made part of the Sony Computer Entertainment Group and released other titles such as Meg or Unit 13. The later one came out on PS Vita, being also the last video game released by Zipper Interactive following its closure in 2012. Other titles from the late 90s that were released by Zipper Interactive were MechWarrior 3 and of course Recoil. However, MechWarrior 3 was the more popular game out of the two mentioned and it was published by Hasbro Interactive. Recoil, on the other hand, was published by Electronic Arts. Then there was the Westwood Studios, which also had an important role in the development of Recoil, which became later part of Electronic Arts. When it comes to the graphics of the game, it must be said that Recoil has incorporated the same graphics engine that can be found in MechWarrior 3
Single fire engaged. Group fire engaged. Imminent.
or Crimson Skies, called the Game Z engine. In fact, these are the only three games that make use of this engine. What is also interesting in Recoil is the physics, destructibility and particles that were a pretty neat feature for a game back in the late 90s. When it comes to the audio of the game, I must say that I was pleasantly surprised back on the day with the sounds found throughout the whole campaign and especially by the weapon sounds, which in my opinion are still great. or the sounds made by the tank when it transforms into an alternate form. There is also a soundtrack, supposedly composed by Keith Aaron and Mikhail Pedriana, consisting in a few tracks that can be found on YouTube and which are pretty good if you were to ask me. The gameplay of Recoil is, in my opinion, the best aspect of the game, and it involves controlling a tank, thus being a third-person vehicular simulator. The tank has a more sophisticated naming, being called the BFT, which stands for Battle Force Tank.
Allow someone from a remote outpost to control a BFT, a battle force tank.
All you basically do is shoot at other enemies, also found in vehicles, with some small exceptions. And complete various tasks. You move from point A to point B, although the maps are, I would say, semi-open world, as you can wander around these areas freely, even if you're not yet supposed to reach that point in the game. However, one of the first complaints that I have comes from the fact that the controls are pretty clunky. Sometimes you move too fast, other times too slow. The mouse movement doesn't feel good some of the times, and even with all the adjustments made in the options, you still find controlling this tank pretty hard, especially when you get blindsided ambushed by various enemies. There is also a mini zoom screen on the bottom left, which helps you have a better aim, especially when it comes to hitting distant enemies, but for closer ones is not that useful. At the same time, you will have to save your game very often, and I mean it when I say this, because even on the easiest difficulty you will still die a lot. And a lot. And a lot. Until I decided that I accept the fact of being a loser and activated the invincibility cheat, because I also didn't want to lose my mind over this game. Coming back to the game, a neat mechanic comes from the fact that throughout the game you will find several tank upgrades, which consists in alternate forms given to your tank. This way, the tank transforms itself and can cross different terrains such as water, by turning into a combat boat, lava, by turning into a floating tank, by turning into a mini submarine, besides the normal version of the tank. Most of the times, the tank will transform itself into the needed form, even when you don't want it to. Otherwise, you must press the F key corresponding to the form you must use. And now I will talk about the best part of the game, in my opinion, namely its weapons, or rather the variety of them. There are 9 weapons tabs, each of them containing 2 weapons, and most of them having a basic version of that specific weapon and an upgraded version. First of all, you have a primary weapon, which is weaker than most of the others, but which you will probably use the most in the game. The first primary weapon is called the Rapid Fire Pulse Gun, and its only advantage is that you have an unlimited amount of these blue lasers.
This area, so you're on your own, soldier.
Then you have the enhanced rapid fire pulse gun, which shoots pink lasers and deals more damage at the cost of having to find ammo for it. You can find this weapon early on in the game if you know where to look.
ERSKG power and rapid fire pulse gun on board.
Then you have secondary weapons, starting with the high explosive mortar, which deals a lot of damage and can also create ramps that can lead to some secrets. The advanced version of this weapon is called the Molecular Distortion Mortar, which when hitting the ground creates a puddle of acid. The next weapon is the Napalm Cannon, which shoots fire, but I would say that this is maybe not the most effective weapon in this game. The upgraded or alternate version is the Freon Burst Cannon, that this time uses cryogenic shots, allowing you to slow or freeze and destroy enemies. After that comes the Proximity High Explosive Mine, which is basically the high explosive mortar turned into a mine. The physics of this weapon is, in my opinion, not the best. Its upgraded version is the Molecular Distortion Mine, which has the same effect as the mortar version. The next weapons, at least in my playthrough, were the least used ones, being remote variants of both of the mine versions previously described. The next weapon is a pretty cool one, being a laser, or more precisely, the Laser Saber, that deals quite a lot of damage and can reflect off surfaces, creating multiple opportunities to kill your enemies or to make a pretty nice effect. The upgraded version is called the Laser Designator, and when shot at an enemy for a certain time period, it destroys it. The next weapon is called the Arc Saber, and it is in my opinion the most effective one in the game, as it can destroy multiple enemies at the same time. And I have said earlier that most of weapons are upgrades of a basic form, but here I do not consider the Sonic Burst Cannon, the Pulse Wave Cannon, to be an upgrade of Arc Saber, the electric arc weapon, because they are too different. The Sonic Burst Cannon is one of the most powerful guns in the game if shot precisely. The last weapons are various versions of rockets. First of all, you have the Lock-on Explosive Missile, which is a very powerful weapon and also pretty accurate since it locks onto enemies. There is also the Tether Guided Missile, which when shot you can control it to its final destination. The last weapons in the game act in my opinion more as Easter eggs, as you will find very few of them through your playthroughs. Speaking about the practical nuke, and its remote version, which act exactly as the rockets previously mentioned, but deal a lot more damage. You use these weapons to kill a pretty wide range of enemies, starting from some basic small tanks, others that shoot flames or mines or lasers at you, the more dangerous Lock-on rockets vehicles, and you will hear this warning incoming missile quite a lot. Or the electric arc and Sonic Burst Cannon tanks, and even some robots. Besides that, there are also some turrets that do not present too much trouble, except the Lock-on rockets turrets, which sometimes might be hard to spot or even hit because of the bad camera controls. The story of the game does not impress that much in my opinion, and it involves 6 missions that are however pretty long, and most importantly, their level design is quite varied. You are living in a world in which a big corporation called the Megacorp, being a high-tech manufacturing company after a fulminous ascension, has reached the conclusion that it wants to wipe the human race and replace it with robotic alternatives. They also control pretty much every aspect on Earth through their Megacorp network by the year 2019. Yeah. Remember guys, that this game was released more than 20 years ago, when a lot of people thought they were going to die in the year 2000. And also remember that 100 years ago people thought humanity would invent flying cars and live their best lives, and look what we have now, anthropic catastrophes such as wars or slapping competitions. That's why aliens don't talk to us. Coming back to Recoil, a small group of hackers, with their mastermind being Dr. Reigns, have managed with a few others to not be co-opted into this megacorp thingy, thus creating the so-called alliance. The first mission begins with them explaining to you that you're going to control an unaltered tank, namely the BFT, and by the way, there is not an actual character that you play as. And then there are some low resolution cutscenes between each mission that are maybe not the best way to explain your objectives, as in my opinion, even though they are quite short, they are also pretty boring and cringy.
Can take out an entire city block.
Hey, Sport, I'm tracking your progress. The VTOL is taking you to the network's chemical weapons operation.
However, there are also the loading screens between levels, which explain in my opinion very well the missions and each specific objectives for them by showing them to you on a top view map of each area. I find this way of telling the story much better than the cutscenes.
The machine's chemical weapons. Take it out before the missiles are complete. The chemical production plant is volatile. With the right fire.
The first mission, which is called the Island Storm, has you wandering around a pretty extensive area. The level design of this mission is in my opinion well made. The level also serves as the introduction to the core mechanics of the game. And I must say that there is also a map for the first 5 levels, which can be very useful, as it also highlights the area your next objective is in. Besides killing enemy tanks or turrets, your first goal is to destroy a force field control panel in order to advance. Also, after completing each task, you will get a message that will both congratulate and tell you about your next task.
Mission complete.
The force field is history. The route to the missile command base is open. Good work.
Next, you must go to a site-looking area and shoot some fuse-looking thingies that emit connections to a core, and then shoot the core itself.
Incoming transmission. Mission complete.
Yes!
After that, you get to a beach area where you must destroy some rockets before they get the chance to launch. There is 3 of them. The final task of this mission is to go to the landing site, where a cargo plane comes to pick you up and take you to the next mission. I don't know why, but I always liked destroying this plane back in the day, probably because there are no consequences, as this plane continues to spawn no matter the circumstances. The second level is called Dust and Metal, and it is a more industrial-like area that you are going to play through.
Down on the outskirts of a network-controlled compound.
The first objective is to infiltrate in a facility and upgrade your BFT with the boat transforming device.
Amphibious device attached.
Then you must destroy a power plant.
Laser saber energy.
Warning. Power plant core.
Which is a really fun part of this mission in my opinion. After that, you have to break some mining machines. And also do not forget to destroy this crane, as I was wandering around for quite some time without realizing that the objective wasn't completely finished. And remember that every time you complete a task, a message will come up, so watch out for that. The last important task in this level involves destroying the core of the network's weapon production operation, namely a facility processor. Then you must go to the landing area, but before that remember to hit this switch. Then get in the plane and we're done here. The third level is called Thermal Meltdown, and it takes place near a volcano in an area surrounded by lava. Your first task is to enter the main crater, then to destroy 2 lava pumps in order to open a path. After that, you must get another BFT upgrade, giving it the hover floating form.
Hover device attached and enabled. Incoming transmission. Mission complete.
Now that you have hover technology, you can...
Next you must enter the volcano core, but watch out for this area because it is quite a dangerous one, full of enemies shooting rockets at you.
Warning.
The last main objective has you destroying a TNT beam in the volcano crater. Go to the landing area, get once again in the plane and end the mission. The fourth level is called the Poison Valley, and it is smaller than the previous ones, but it is very well constructed. The plane drops you in water, and first off you must break a dam. And by doing so, you cut the weapon building facility's water source, but also raise the water in the area, thus being able to access more locations. The second task has you destroying a missile construction factory by shooting at some panels.
Incoming transmission. Mission.
Next, you must destroy a chemical plant by mixing some chemicals and creating an implosion effect. And I know the next thing I'm talking about is not a main task, but there is also this train that you can destroy in a spectacular, satisfying fashion. And the last main objective is a bit more confusing until you realize that after this bridge breaks, you can drive on the rails and shoot at these posters. Just to find the so-called secret weapon. Get back to the surface, destroy the secret weapon, and then head off to the landing zone. But watch out, because there will be a mini ambush there waiting for you. Get in the plane, and that's it for this level. The fifth level is called the Cold Kill Chaos, and this time you will be playing in a snowy, icy, cold mountain area. You must first break these cables in order to reveal an entrance to an underground passage.
Laser saber energy. Incoming transmission.
Then you go to a room where this clone's contraption awaits you. You must shoot each of these little windows. And also don't forget about the central core. Next up is finding the submarine BFT upgrade.
Submarine device attached and labeled. Incoming transmission.
After that, get underwater by pressing F4.
Underwater mission is to take out a power plant. The machines get energy by extracting heat from the
Wander through the undergrounds of the area and find this power plant. And by the way, you must first break these small panels found next to each of the legs of this machinery, then shoot a mine in each of them. If you succeeded, you will see that the light will go off on that leg. During the last task, you must go both on the surface and underwater in order to destroy some panels that grant the elimination of this cloning machine. After that, take the plane and leave the area. The last level, specifically the 6th one, named the Network Showdown, is the largest one and the most diverse of them all, but that can also be a little bit confusing. First of all, you'll start in a city-like area and you're informed that there is no map for this level. I could understand that, but after playing more of this level and getting several crashes throughout it, mentioning that this is the only level that had crashes, I have gotten to the conclusion that this last level must have been a bit rushed, less polished, probably by the deadlines coming from the publisher towards the developers. So as a warning, if you play this game, save as often as possible on this last level. Anyway, you must first find a way into the undergrounds of the city, where the heart of the network lies. You do so by finding this elevator and opening it by shooting these two red thingies. After you get to the underground, there are 3 power stations that hide something interesting, some teleporters respectively. Each of them takes you to a different location, and even though the developers reused some assets from the previous levels, it is still adding to the originality of this game. In each of these 3 new locations you will find a core, the first one that you must reach by very awkwardly jumping by driving up the stairs, and make a laser destroy it by making it following you. Then there is a puzzle that you have to solve by shooting at these mirrors. And the last one, once again a core that shoots at you. You destroy it by shooting at it just before it enters the middle chamber. After you complete each of these 3 new locations, you will get teleported to this contraption just to realize that in the end is the final boss of the game. You just shoot these small yellow squares on all the sides of it. And you get this victory message, which is in my opinion not the best way to end a game. What? Again, it makes it feel like it was a little bit rushed. At the end, another awkward cutscene plays, with hopes for a sequel, I guess.
We'll pick up the pieces, search for survivors, rebuild, and we'll keep the BFT going just in case another threat surfaces. Watch your back.
The credits roll, and by the end of them, my game crashed again. This pretty much rolls up the story of the game. There are also some secrets that involve you finding weapons faster than you're supposed to in the game, or powerful ones such as the nukes. There is also a multiplayer mode represented by a few arena type missions, but pretty much nobody ever played this mode. I will also mention the cheat codes that are available in the game, depending on your playstyle if you want to use them. In conclusion, the graphics in this game are not the most impressive even for that time, but the physics and visual effects create a unique feel to the game. The audio is mostly impressive through the sounds of the weapons and the tanks. The gameplay is still a strong part of Recoil, with the exception of the kind of clunky controls. The story might not be the best, but the levels are well made, are varied, but it would have been great if there were more of them. The final score for Recoil is in my opinion an 8 out of 10 for that time, and it also deserves the Golden Age award for its style. At the end of this review, I would like to say that this game Recoil should at least be re-released on GOG and also get a remake or even a sequel, as it was also teased in the final cutscene of the game. Because to this day there is no other futuristic combat tank simulator that comes close to this game. And this is not just my opinion, being a shared one with a lot of other gamers. However, realistically speaking, the probability of any of this to happen is pretty low. At the end of this review, and as usual, I would like you to write in the comments below your favorite memories involving this game, Recoil. And if you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, like this video, share it and turn on the notification bell for more videos like this. This was Dave from Golden Age Gaming Productions, and you just watched the Golden Age Gaming review of Recoil. And remember, time is ticking away, but memories are here to stay. See you next time.